Good morning, good morning. God bless everyone. Well, we're going to be able to probably tackle this whole chapter in this episode. Genesis 33. Jacob and Esau finally meet and depart on good terms. So that's the good thing here. All that planning and all that worry was for naught. So let's dig into the scriptures and see what we can find. And I think we'll keep our map here for the moment. Or maybe I'll do the this is about where they're starting out at. This is where we'll be starting off this particular period of time. I'm going to start off with a little brief history here. Not a history, but actually going to jump forward in time. Because even though they're going to leave on good terms right now, the descendants of both these brothers are going to be at least the Esau's descendants are going to be against Jacob's descendants. So I thought I'd point to that a little bit at first here. It's in Numbers. Just a quick little brief going forward on what's going to happen with these families. So let's pray. Oh, dear Heavenly Father, thank you, Father, for this time looking at your word. And help me, Father, to be ever truthful to your word and to explain it in a way that's understandable. We give you all the praise and thanks. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Okay. So, verses. So, well, today has arrived, and we see that Jacob's worry was for nothing. Over the years, it seems Esau has matured and does not want to dwell on the past. So, which in latter years, during Moses taking possession of the promised land, that's a good 400 plus years from now, the descendants will not be as friendly, enemies at least from the Edomite standpoint. So, in Numbers 20, 14 through 21, it gives us a little hint. So, let's take a look at that and how much the animosity between these two groups of people builds over the years. And realize that Israel was actually in Egypt for over 300 years, plus the 40 years they were in the wilderness wanderings. So we're talking well over 400 years, maybe closer to 500 years since these two brothers' descendants meet up with each other. So Numbers 20:14. So the profits of that fruit were temporary. At least this period of time, there's a little lull in their feud, but it will come back. So Moses sent messengers from Kadesh unto the king of Edom. Thus saith the brother Israel, thou knowest all the travail that hath befallen us, how our fathers went down to Egypt, and we have dwelt in Egypt a long time, and the Egyptians vexed us and our fathers. And when we cried unto the Lord, he heard our voice, and sent an angel, and hath brought us forth out of Egypt. And behold, we are in Kadesh, a city in the utmost of thy border. Let us pass, I pray thee, through thy country. We will not pass through the fields or through the vineyards, neither will we drink of the water of the wells. We will go by the king's highway, and we will not turn to the right hand nor to the left until we have passed thy borders. And Edom said unto him, thou shalt not pass by me, lest I come out against thee with the sword. And the children of Israel said unto them, we will go by the highway, and if I and my cattle drink of thy water, then I will pay for it. I will only, without doing anything else, go through on my feet. And he said, thou shalt not go through. And Edom came out against him with much people and with a strong hand. Thus Edom refused to give Israel passage through his border. Therefore Israel turned away from him. So you can see that time here definitely made a bitter enemies between these two groups. And actually God, remember when God said that he loves he loves Jacob and hates Esau. This is what it stemmed from. God knew what was going to happen. And there's a famous book called Obadiah, The whole book is about this feud and how God is going to punish the Edomites for what they did to their brothers here. I'm just going to read a few verses. It's a one-chapter book. I forget how many verses there are, but I'll know here in a minute. But I'm only going to read 3 verses, 10, 11, and 12. So it's Obadiah 1. For thy violence against thy brother Jacob, shame shall cover thee, and thou shalt be cut off forever. In that day that thou stoodest on the other side, in the day that the strangers carried away captive his forces, and foreigners entered into his gates, and cast lots upon Jerusalem, even thou was one of them. They actually not only didn't help Jacob here, or Moses, but also they actually helped the enemy of the Israel find them and help to uncover their hiding places and stuff. But thou shouldest not have looked on the day of thy brother in the day that he became a stranger, neither shouldest thou have rejoiced over the children of Judea in the day of their destruction, neither shouldest thou have spoken proudly in the day of their distress. So basically they were mocking them. They had nothing to say about their brother. And so that's Obadiah, and it's a prophecy of how God is going to deal with them in the end times. So not a pretty picture. Anyways, so back to where we were. So Genesis 33:1. That's my introduction. And Jacob lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, Esau came, and with him 400 men, and he divided the children unto Leah and unto Rachel and unto the 2 handmaids. So again, he still doesn't know how his brother is going to react yet. And he put the handmaids and the children foremost, and Leah and her children after, and Rachel and Joseph hinder. Here we definitely see who Jacob cares about most, or maybe it's more of a situation that because the handmaids are more like servants, Esau would most likely leave them alone. As for Leah, she had the oldest kids, which could run faster. One second. Sorry for the interruption there. Where were we? And Leah, she had the oldest kids, which could run faster than the rest. And at this point, Joseph is a baby, or pretty young, so put him in the rear. Now, do I really believe that based on Jacob's track record? Probably not. And based on this verse in Genesis 29:30, probably not. And he went in also unto Rachel, and he loved also Rachel more than Leah, and served with him yet 7 other years. And Joseph also has many more privileges coming. Now, when we get to chapter 37, we're going to see how much Joseph is much more, had more privileges than his brothers. That's in Genesis 37:3, just a little taste here. Now, Israel loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a coat of many colors. And all the other kids were jealous of this coat that he made for him. So I can definitely see that Jacob definitely had a problem with the fact that he was forced into marrying Leah. And that I feel kind of bad for her. She must have her life must not have been very pleasant. Well, the handmaids were considered more like slaves, so that they probably weren't as concerned about it, because that was pretty common in that time frame, that was their job, more or less. Kind of like almost like a surrogate mother kind of a thing. Okay, back to Genesis 33:3. And he passed over before them and bowed himself to the ground 7 times until he came near to his brother. That's an interesting thing, 7 times. That's actually, they found some tablets. They call them the Tel Amira tablets. And in it says, proper when greeting a king to bow to the earth 7 times in approaching him. So Jacob was approaching his brother Esau and greeting Esau as a king, which indeed Esau was. He had become the ruler and the king, so to speak, over the area of Mount Seir. area known as Edom. And so he is giving honor to his brother's position, bowing before him 7 times, a custom in those days. So kind of interesting that it wasn't just to make his brother feel better, but he was actually showing due respect for his position. Okay, verse 4. And Esau ran to meet him, embraced him, and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. Okay, so now Jacob can relax a little bit. It seems that his brother has gotten over his anger from earlier, some 20 plus years earlier. And they are twins, they are brothers. Let bygones be bygones. It looks as if God had certainly touched Esau's heart because he had sworn vengeance that he would kill Jacob. So we got some Proverbs too that come into play here. It's actually Psalms 34:4. I sought the Lord and he heard me and delivered me from all my fears. And also Psalms 16:7. No, I think that these are Proverbs. I put these in wrong. Let me get the Proverbs. Proverbs 16:7. When a man's ways please the Lord, he maketh even his enemies to be at peace with him. And also Proverbs 21:1. The king's heart is the hand of the Lord, and the rivers of water he turneth it whatsoever his will. So the fact that he was a king too probably helped, because he was used to having his way. Okay, back to verse 5. And he lifted up his eyes and saw the women and the children, and said, Who are these with thee? And he said, These the children which God hath graciously given thy servant. Time to meet the family. And I do love how he introduces them as a blessing from God. Continuing here in verse 6. Then the handmaids came near, they and their children, and they bowed themselves. And Leah also with her children came near and bowed themselves. And after came Joseph near, and Rachel, and they bowed themselves. And he said, What meanest thou by all this drove which I met? And he said, These are to find grace in the sight of my Lord. He was talking about the animals. And Esau said, I have enough, my brother. Keep thou hast unto thyself. And Jacob said, Nay, I pray thee, if now I have found grace in thy sight, then receive my present at my hand. For therefore I have seen thy face, as though I had seen the face of God, and thou wast pleased with me. Take, I pray thee, my blessing that is brought to thee, because God hath dealt graciously with me, and because I have enough. And he urged me, and he took it. So apparently Jacob believes for the moment that his strategy of approaching his brother has worked. But it wasn't necessary. He's thinking the bowing and the... but listening to Esau, what a change. Certainly there is a change that has taken place in Jacob also. Before he had traded a bowl of stew to get a birthright, and now he's willing to give flocks and herds to his brother for nothing. In fact, Jacob insisted he take them. Esau finally accepted the gift, and in that day and in that land, if one refused to take a gift which was urged upon him, it was considered an insult. Therefore, Esau took the gift. In that culture, one never accepted a gift from an enemy either, only from a friend. To accept a gift was to accept the friendship. So it definitely seems like Esau is turned over a new leaf when it comes to his anger. Verse 12. And he said, Let us take our journey and let us go, and I will go before thee. Now that's Esau offering to go in front of Jacob to help him on his journey. I think I know Esau is considering the fact that Jacob is going to follow him down to Seir and live in his land. And I guess the problem I have here is the fact that Jacob doesn't really tell him he has to follow God's law and go elsewhere, because he kind of talks his way out of it, as we're going to see here. And he said, Let us take our journey and let us go, and I will go before thee. And he said unto him, My Lord knoweth that the children are tender, and the flocks and the herds with young are with me. If men should overdrive them one day, all the flock will die. So yeah, that's excuse number one. And I just mentioned here that Esau offers to be like a guard leading the way, and some scholars lead back to where Esau is from in Edom. But Jacob also has his marching orders from God, so he's humbly trying to decline. We get a sense in verse 14, though, coming up here. Jacob did have plans to at least visit Esau, or at least wanted Esau to think that, but once out of sight, went towards Succoth and was not planning to visit his brother. And we'll see here in verse 14. Let my Lord, I pray thee, pass over before his servant, and I will lead on softly, according as the cattle that goeth before me, and the children be able to endure until I come unto my Lord under Seir. See, he actually mentions Seir. And Esau said, let me now take leave with these some of my folks that are with me. And he said, what needeth it? Let me find grace in the sight of my Lord. Here Esau offers to leave some of his men with him to help him in the journey, and that Esau is going to go on ahead. And that Jacob comes back and basically says, no, I can handle it. There won't be any problem. I have the Lord with me. So Esau is still trying to be involved, saying we will go the same speed as the children and the cattle, and also finally trying to leave some of his men behind. Esau really wanted to convince Jacob to head south. I'm not sure why Jacob did not share the truth, but it was of his nature to use deception rather than the truth. We see he is changing, but also must realize he's human. We all can, I believe, be like a Jacob. We know what's right, but we can fall victim to the flesh. And I definitely have caught myself in positions like that before. So verse 16 here. So Esau returned that day on his way to Seir. So Esau took off. Let me bring up the map now. There's the map. So we're talking about this general area here. And this is a better map to show what's going on here. So here's where Esau came from. He's down here in Seir, Edom. And he's coming up. He came up here to meet Jacob right here in Peniel. And so now Esau is heading back now with his men. And supposedly Esau at least thinks that Jacob is following him. But he doesn't. He heads over to Succoth. So continuing here. And Jacob journeyed to Succoth and built him a house and made booths for his cattle. Therefore, the name of the place is called Succoth. Succoth means booths. Succoth was on the east of the Jordan between the brook Jabbok and that river, about 40 miles from Jerusalem. So Jerusalem is actually... This is Jerusalem on this map, in this general area. And so basically he's in between the two rivers. This is the Jordan, and this is the Jabbok. And so he's kind of in between the two. And consequently near Peniel, where a city was afterwards built, which Joshua assigned to the tribe of Gad. Peniel actually becomes a city during the time of Joshua. Jerome says that Succoth, he was a theologian, that Succoth was in the district of Scipolius, and the Jews informed us that the name of Darelah was sometimes applied to it. So it took on a couple of different names. So this really turned into kind of a famous area. And Jacob came to Shalom in the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan. So he left it. He stayed there for a little bit, and then after he rested up, he went over to Shechem over here. And now he's in the promised land, which is in the land of Canaan, which he came from Panorama and pitched his tent before the city. Remember, when he first came, this was his first travel to go up to Haran, where his uncle is. And so he's basically coming back to the same area. The word A famous area, and a place where Jacob's well talked about when Jesus visited Samaria. That's what this Shechem is the same area that the famous woman at the well scene happened. And it actually mentions that Jacob dug this well. It should probably be rendered, the name of this town in some places can be called Shalem, which is like the word shalom, which means peace, or in safety, as it's translated by the Chaldean Arabic and Coverdale text. So over in John 3:23, look at some other verses here on this particular area. And John also was baptizing in near Siloam, because there was much water there, and there came and were baptized. So again, this is the area of the Jordan and John the Baptist was at. And so far, the city of Shechem, which was situated in a narrow valley abounding with springs between Mount Ebal and Gezerim, having the former on the north and the latter on the south, 10 miles from Shiloh and 34 from Jerusalem. It became the capital of Samaria after the ruin of the city of that name. And we got a few verses on that over in Joshua 24:1. And Joshua gathered all the tribes of Israel to Shechem and called for the elder of Israel and for their heads and for their judges and for their officers, and they presented themselves before the Lord. Judges 9:1. And Abimelech, the son of Jerubbaal, went to Shechem unto his mother's brethren and communed with him and with all the family of the house of his mother's father, saying, just wanted to show some other places that this is a very popular area here in the Judges. In John, here's the famous passage I was talking about. And it actually mentions Jacob, actually dug this well. Then came he to the city of Samaria, which is called Sychar. This is Jesus' travels, near to the parcel of ground that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Now Jacob's well was there. Jesus, therefore, being worried with his journey, sat thus on the well, and it was about the 6th hour. There came a woman of Samaria to draw water, and Jesus said unto her, Give me to drink. For his disciples had gone away into the city to buy meat. And then said the woman of Samaria unto him, How is it thou, being a Jew, ask drink of me, which are a woman of Samaria? For the Jews have no dealings with the Samaritans. And Jesus answered and said unto him, If thou knewest the gift of God, and who it is that saith to thee, Give me to drink, thou wouldst have asked him, and he would have given thee living water. So then another verse on Sychar, that's the other name for this city, over in Acts 7:16. This is more the Greek way of writing it. And were carried away into Shechem, and laid in the sepulchre that Abraham brought for a sum of money of the sons of Emor, father of Shechem. Okay, going back to Genesis 33:19, and he bought a parcel of field where he had spread his tent at the hand of the children of Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 pieces of money. By the way, I saw a reference that 100 pieces of money, that was actually sheep. They didn't have really hard currency then. The currency was things like livestock and food and that kind of thing. So when it says 100 pieces of money, that was probably 100 sheep. And he erected there an altar and called it Elon Israel. He's home for the time being. And Elon Israel means God, the God of Israel. And a couple of verses just on that. Genesis 32:28. And he said, Thy name shall be called no more Jacob, but Israel, for as a prince thou hast power with God and with men, and hast prevailed. Genesis 35:7. And he built their altar and called the place Bethel. Now, Bethel is actually down here. El just means like town or community. Because where God appeared unto him when he fled from the face of his brother. So ultimately he's going to end up down there. And ultimately he'll end up all the way down in Hebron. That's where he'll be when the whole famine starts and he has to try to get food. So he sends his sons into Egypt. and we'll be talking about that on length when we get there. We get more towards chapter 37 through 40 time frame, the famous story of Joseph. Everyone loves that story. So that's all I have for today, a little bit shorter than usual. Let's pray. Thank you, Lord. Thank you so much for this teaching and for helping us to understand it. And we give you all the praise and thanks. In Jesus' precious name I pray. Amen. So I hope everybody has a great day. Let's see, Teresa and Liz and Nick and his wife, Marianne, and whoever wants to be there, and Olivia and Quentin. And I hope you have a great day, and we will talk again tomorrow.